For some reasons, in my office, I do not have one, but two copies of Beyond the Worship Wars by Tom and Long. And the thing is, I do not remember buying any one of them. Maybe someone wanted to send me a message. I don't know. But since there will be a proposal at our annual general meeting concerning the time of our worship services in the future, I thought it would be wise to go back to this book just in case. And I was reading, one of the two copies of this book. I came across the following sentence that I think summarized perfectly the reality of countless churches across North America, regardless of the denomination. So Long writes, "No real change comes easily, but changes are especially explosive when they have to do with congregational worship." And I guess it's totally understandable. Worship is at the heart of a Christian congregation. It brings people together for a few moments before we all go back to our lives with all the craziness and all the chaos of our lives. And when we come on Sunday mornings, we hope that we would find something that would speak to us or move us or energize us. And this is a huge challenge because, you see, if everybody would be exactly like me, there would be no argument about the worship services that I'm writing. Well, maybe not. I probably would find a way to argue with myself, but that's another topic, okay? Now, planning congregational worship services is a huge challenge because we are a community made of different people with different tastes, different ideas, different sensibilities. Some people in the congregation wish that worship would be more relevant, exciting, dramatic, spontaneous, while others wish it were more, quieter, more reverent, traditional, dignified. I will be totally honest with you this morning. Maybe I should not, but personally, I hate liturgical dance. I cannot see the point. For me, it's just a waste of valuable time during Sunday morning, and that's me. That's my problem, because on many occasions, I witnessed people literally crying because they were deeply moved and touched by the performance they just saw in front of the church. We were all United Church people, and we had two completely different views and understanding of the same liturgical act, and none were wrong necessarily. You would not be surprised if I tell you there's nothing new under the sun here. This morning we read a text from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, and at this time, Corinth was an important commercial city made of people coming from every corner of the Mediterranean world. Consequently, the church established by Paul was made of people of different origins: Jews, Gentiles, rich, poor, men, women. A diversity that led to many problems. If we have to believe what we read in Paul's letter, the early church in Corinth was highly dysfunctional. They probably never agreed on anything. I don't know if it's the historical truth, but each time we're reading one or the other epistle to the Corinthians, we have the feeling that Paul is constantly repeating, "Okay, now concerning the problem about which you wrote me again." In today's passage, Paul tries to provide some advice about a problem concerning meat. Yes, meat, this apparently trivial topic for our modern hearers, is a real issue for some Corinthians because, you see, back then there were no local butcher shops, around the corner. The meat sold at the markets were nearly always linked to some religious practice, devotion to an idol, or a festival for one god or another. Some member of the Corinthian church were wondering if they could buy and eat this meat previously offered to other gods. Was it cheating? Were they true to their faith? Were they just caving to the social pressure of their time and returning to their old faith? They were wondering. And at the same time, it seemed that others, Christians in Corinth, were convinced that was absolutely no problem whatsoever eating the meat sold at the market because they had the knowledge, as the text says. Since they knew there was only one and true God, while all the other gods and idols were false beliefs made by human beings, making all the sacrifice and ritual concerning meat de facto meaningless. So they could eat as much meat as they could afford, and the scruples of the other members of the community were just ridiculous. And this issue might have been a terrible tragedy and very divisive topic for the early Corinthian church. But unless we want to reflect about the virtues of turning vegan or calculating our carbon footprint, this eating meat debate seems to be totally disconnected from our 21st century reality. What's the big deal, we might wonder? Where's the beef? Sorry, I could not resist that one. Sorry. I'm totally sorry. Well, this conflict speaks to our time because it's related to religion, liturgy, beliefs. Those of us who have switched denomination understand very well what it means to come to a new church while still carrying a different background. For example, some here grew up as Roman Catholic and might hope to have the sacrament of communion more often because it's a ritual that still speaks to them. And others come from tradition that consider the Lord's Supper as nothing more than remembering Jesus' last meal with his friend, and doing once a year is sufficient. Also, everyone who ever worked on interdenominational projects know how easy divisions can resurface in the middle of a conversation. Oh, how can you call yourself a Christian if you write a book claiming that God does not exist? Or if you reject someone on the sole basis of sexual orientation, or if you don't reach out to the poor and the needs of your community, how can you call yourself a Christian? We might not like to admit it, but often we're not that far from those Corinthians who thought the attitudes, the behavior, the opinion of the member of the community who disagree with them were theologically and liturgically completely wrong. So Paul's answer to the Corinthians' dilemma is simple and yet full of wisdom. Basically, he tells them that meat is meat. It has nothing to do with salvation because meat is morally neutral. Paul says we are neither better off if we do eat, nor worse if we do not eat. What seems to really matter for Paul is the love that builds and keeps the community together. And meal is only a problem if it leads to division in the church. And Paul goes even a step further in his argumentation by inviting his reader to reflect about the impact their actions have on others. And let's be clear here, he's not necessarily saying that we have to never try anything new or aim for the lowest common denominator on every topic. No, the real Paul never seemed happy with absolutes. No, Paul just invites people to address difficult and challenging issues from the other side point of view, to try to walk in their shoes for just a few minutes, to understand how our beliefs and our opinions impact those around us and also impact our relationship with God. Because for Paul, Christians are first and foremost involved in a community of believers. We are part of a network of relationship, and the strength of this interconnectedness is the ultimate criterion to measure our faithfulness to God. Our relationship with God and our relationship with one another are in fact the two sides of the same coin. And this conclusion forces us to wonder. Forces us to wonder if we want to be right or if we want to find a solution to our problems. Because there's always more to consider than being right when we're confronted to a divisive topic. Because what's the point of getting it right if we get our relationship wrong? What's the point of getting it right if we fail to listen and engage fellow Christians and people we meet every day? What's the point of winning an argument about liturgy, doctrine, if it leads us to intolerance and insensitivity? Even if it's very difficult, we need to remember it is never a matter of just being right, but also of doing the right thing. Our action should be based on care, on love, on deep concern for the other members of the community. Our decision-making process should go beyond the eternal battle between the liberal and progressive on one side and the conservative and the traditionalist on the other side, and trying to decide this time who's going to give up. We're called to go beyond our ego, our preferences, the lesson we might have learned in Sunday school or personal agenda, in order to form a community worshiping together the same God. Someone wise told me recently, you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. To the eternal question, can we all agree on one single way to be the church together? The answer is basically no. No, it's impossible. Regardless of the decision on one topic or another, there will be always people that will not be fully satisfied. Compromise are always required in a church, in a community. The real question is, how do we make those compromises? Will we belittle those who do not have our level of theological and religious knowledge? Or will we engage in a dialogue in order to stretch our mind? Will we act like bullies who try to crush opposition? Or will we embrace the diversity of opinions and views, regarding style of worship, object in the sanctuary, or liturgical dance? Will we begin a worship war? Or will we follow Paul's advice and call to go beyond what is right or wrong and to focus on the connection we have one for another? And once again, the solution begins with each and every one of us. Amen.